Hi to all. So in this video we will calculate the optimal number of contracts when we want to hedge a particular position, and in this case we will focus on a long hedge or an anticipatory hedge. So in this, let's assume this airline fears that oil prices are going to go up. So far now we know that the way to hedge this future delivery of or future need for consumption of oil, or the way to approach this is we would likely buy a futures contract on oil, and well, that would serve the purpose, and it would help us hedge this risk of prices going up. So in other words, we can sort of, to some extent, think about this as locking the price that we have now. This may be beneficial if prices indeed go up, but if prices go down, we will have locked the price. So if prices go down, we will not be able to take advantage of that decline in potential decline in our costs as well. That's hedging. We're just eliminating risk, so it will not go up, but it will not go down as well. In this case, if oil prices go down, that would be a good thing. Now, one important question is, how do we find out what is the optimal number of contracts, right? The one important thing here is we have to remember this formula, which is the hedge ratio. And this hedge ratio, we're going to represent this with an H. This hedge ratio, the formula is, well, correlation between the spot and futures. And then we multiply this by the standard deviation of the spot and divided by the standard deviation of futures. So number one, this is going to tell us, this is going to give us the basically how many futures we need for each unit we want to hedge in the spot leg of our portfolio. So for each barrel of oil we want to, or gallon of oil in this case, we want to hedge how many futures we need to buy. So it is the case that depending on this, which is the correlation between spot prices and future prices, we may not necessarily need to buy 1 gallon for each gallon we're hedging. Depending on the correlation, we may attain a full hedge, even by buying a lower number of gallons in the futures leg of our portfolio, or we may need more. That all depends on this correlation. So the first thing is to calculate the hedge ratio, and let's do that first. So that is a very straightforward calculation because we are given this 0.85, then we are given this 0.04, and we are given the 0.07, which are the spot, futures, and correlation. So once we have that, if you do this quick calculation, we will realize that we end up with a hedge ratio that is 0.48. Let me write this again so it looks clearer. 4.8, and then let's say 6. Let's round it. 4.86. Then the next step is, now we have hedge ratio. So in other words, we know for each gallon of oil, this is how much. Basically, this is how many gallons we should buy in the futures market, and in order to have to be fully hedged. So now, in order to hedge this risk of oil prices going up, so now what is the optimal number of contracts? And we're going to call this N star, optimal number of contracts. So this calculation is more straightforward, and sometimes we miss it. The most important calculation is this, the hedge ratio. Now, this is just a mechanical kind of a thing. We're okay, if we need 0.486 gallons of oil in futures, for each gallon of oil we want to hedge, that we will need in the future, then, well, how many gallons do we need? Well, we need 10 million. Okay, so the first thing is, if we need 10 million, and let me give you the formula, right? But let me start with the intuition. If we need 10 million, then how many gallons of oil do we need to get in the futures market? Well, we need 0.4086 for each gallon of oil we are hedging. So just multiply one thing by the other, and that will give us this number. So that would basically give us, that's a very straightforward calculation, right? That would basically give us 4,857,142. And because we have rounded it, let's just say 4,860,000, and then that's fine. So we need to get 4,860,000 gallons of oil in futures market. And then finally, when we actually go and we try to buy the futures, we will realize there is a little bit of a problem, which is similar to what we had been working on with call options. We cannot buy a single call option, or we cannot buy a single put option, right? We need to buy 100. So the same similar thing happens in futures, and depending on the commodity, different commodities have, or different assets have, different minimum contract sizes. Let's keep in mind that futures are standardized, so because they're standardized, you cannot, most contracts will be, there will be standard contract sizes. So the minimum contract size here is 42,000 gallons, but that's the contract size. So then we cannot buy exactly 4,860,000 gallons of oil in the futures market. But what we need to do is we need to find out how many contracts. So we divide this by the number of gallons for each contract. So as you see, I prefer we're not even using the formula. I'll type it, I'll write it right now. And we will see that this is actually very straightforward. But basically, we will end up with, let me give you the exact number, 4,586,000 4,860,000 divided by 42,000 gallons per contract, then we end up with 115.71 contracts. And there is one important thing: you cannot buy 0.71 contracts, so then you would change this to 116 contracts. You may as well change it to 115, right? What are the implications? Well, if this is the optimal number of contracts, then you would be above optimal if you buy 116 contracts, or you would be below optimal if you go down to 115. Either way, right? It's your choice, but you can either get 115 or 116. You cannot buy partial contracts, so you would end up with one of these two. If you need to type the solution in a practice quiz, an actual graded quiz, either of these two will work just fine. You would not have a problem because there's some margin of error. And that's if when you're working on the actual quizzes, right? If you're working on real life, then this is just about what your preference is depending on your goals. So now let me give you this formula for optimal number of contracts. If we want to write this in a generalized way, what we did is we multiplied the gallons we are hedging by the hedge ratio, and then we divide it by contract size, right? So units hedged, now it sounds a little bit fancier, but it's a very simple thing, times the hedge ratio, which we're calling H star, divided by contract size, and that is what we will have in our book. So we have this formula, and these are the most important ones, right? The main formula here is this one. This one is just adjusting and finding out, okay, depending on how many units I'm hedging, how many gallons of oil I need in the futures, and then depending on the contract size, how many contracts do I need? Okay, so thank you. I hope this was helpful, and once again, thank you for your attention.